Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. My name is Casey Callum with Express Information Systems. So I'm joined by the Express team, Iris, Raina, and Stacy. We're also joined by Binary Stream, Don and Miriam. Today, we will be presenting Binary Stream Property Management for Microsoft Dynamics GP. Binary Stream is an ISV or independent software vendor product that's been on the Dynamics GP marketplace for years and years. A very large percentage of our customers have some sort of Binary Stream product, and this has always been the de facto property management system when it comes to Dynamics GP. So today we're going to show you the product. And for anyone that is interested in the product, we are offering a 10% discount for a purchase of property management that comes from today's webinar. As we go through, if you have questions, you can type those into the chat and I will act as the moderator. So I'll read off those questions to Don as we go along. And we'll also allow for a few minutes at the end. So if you'd like to save your questions until the end, please do that. Looks like we have a small group today, so please don't be shy and let me know if you have any questions, and we'll definitely be able to take a little bit more personalized approach. At the end of the webinar today, we will be sending out evaluation forms. We would ask that you please do send back those evaluation forms. That helps us with our future webinars. And then also we will be providing CPE credits. So if you do need CPE credits, please let Stacy know or let our team know on your evaluation form, and we'll make sure that that we get those credits to you. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Don Ramsey to present property management. Take it away, Don.
All right, thank you very much. I'm getting ahead of myself. What you're looking at is obviously the introductory screen, property management from Microsoft Dynamics GP. My name's Don.
Muted.
I've been an accountant for a few decades. I know I spent a lot of time as a GP frontline consultant, and I've been doing the last 7 years. I've been demoing projects like property management for Dynamics GP. So hopefully, this will make some sense to you. Let's start by giving you a bit of an overview of who we are as a company. Binary Stream is one of the largest ISVs in the Dynamics GP world. We've been around for 20 some years. We've got one of our products has over several thousand customers. Property management around about, I'd say 15 years. And it's very popular as well. So we provide solutions that embed directly in the ERP. So when we look at the demo for property management, we're not going to see something that's being piped in, updated at night. We're going to see something that's very user-friendly, that looks like the rest of GP and feels like the rest of GP, because it's actually coded like GP. So you can see the timeline there. You'll have access to this particular PowerPoint anyway, so I won't read that all off to you, but you'll notice that we've been tied very, very closely to Microsoft for a very, very long time. So property and lease management. It doesn't actually have to be property in the sense of buildings. That's what we often think about. They could be photocopiers, they could be cars, they can be anything at all. They can even be something that's not actually physically real. It's just a matter of managing the contract, the lease, if you will, for that particular product, especially if you're concerned about coming under the GAP standards, ASC 842 or IFRS 16. We are compliant with those standards as well. Now, those standards may change, and then obviously we would have to change to grow with those standards, but it certainly takes the pressure off you as a customer having to worry about making sure that your financials are correct, that you're in harmony with the right standards at the right time. That would be our job going forward. So the joy of having the product built into GP for you also involves getting access to information. If you as a user have the right to get into GP and view data, then you can go into property lease management and view data. Yes, there can be restrictions put by the administrator, but generally speaking, you'll be able to see everything you need to see without leaving the world of GP and going somewhere else to find it. Everything from reports to inquiries to the actual leases, even to documentation if you so desire. Actual physical documentations, PDFs perhaps of the contract, or Word documents of the contract, whatever you might have, can be attached to a lease in more than one place, as I'm going to be sure to show you when we take a look at the demo. So here's the goals for today, or the goals actually for property lease management, not just for today, but for the future as well. We hope to be able to help you streamline the lease management process. So we have wizards that you can use if you're not familiar with property lease management, you're just getting started. We have wizards to set up a lease from scratch, so you can make sure you don't miss a step and everything gets put into place. We have flexibility involved in them. We have the way of adding different types of charges. We can make sure that you have terms that can be modified at any point in time, or additional terms can be added at any point in time. I mentioned briefly the ASC 842 IFRS 16 aspect of it. We make sure, to the best of our ability and to the best of our understanding of the standards, that you're going to be in compliance with them. You notice we say we facilitate your compliance. As those standards change, we will have to rush to keep up with them. But again, that will be on our shoulders, not on yours. We have real-time reporting, cash flow analysis, and we can centralize reporting across a whole property portfolio if you like. So we can have those portfolios grouped together under a particular unit or a particular building name or a particular fleet or whatever it is that you want to set as a standard. You see at the very last point, group properties, vehicle fleets, any kind of leases that you can want to manage, we can help you handle that. Here are some of the challenges we have found in our 15 years of working with property lease management. People do manual processes. People seem to do one of two things. They either buy a lease solution that's got a built-in financial system in it, and then they quickly find, at least we've been told this, they quickly find that, oh, it's cumbersome. The financial system doesn't work very well. It's hard to get the data out in a reportable fashion. We have to use the built-in reports. Or they use a standard ERP, perhaps like Dynamics GP, but they keep everything in spreadsheets. And now at the end of the month, they're posting journal entries. And if you've got a ton of leases, that can be a challenge as well, especially if maybe there's some miscellaneous charges or some terms change and you forget to put that change in. Now, all of a sudden, your client's getting an invoice for something that's not correct, and that never works out very well. So multiple systems, having spreadsheets to try to manage things, those disparate systems lead to human error. We've heard that over and over and over again. And not only that, the more manual management you've got involved, management of the leases themselves, the higher the overhead. The more time you're spending just trying to make sure everything is correct, as opposing to working on other issues that could bring you more value. So you're going to see that we have some flexibility built in, a lot of flexibility built in what you can do with these leases, and hopefully you'll see the advantage of having them built directly into GP, so you can make use of the full aspect of it. So at this point in time, I'm going to see if I can show you a live demo. You should be looking at a GP 18.3 screen, at least as far as my updates are concerned, the latest and the greatest as far as GP is concerned. In this particular screen, I'm looking at a home page. Now, in this particular home page, you'll see my modules underneath. I've got financial, sales, purchasing. You'll notice property management. If I click on property management for you, does it not look and feel like the rest of GP? We have our transactions window, we have our cards, we have our setup options, and away we go. So if we take a look at property management under setup, you'll notice here that we have things like the ability to use each of your segments, if you wish, in GP to represent an aspect of your property. So for example, I've got my property itself. I'm looking at it from the building perspective, just as this demo example shows. That's my property. Maybe it's a high rise. I've got a unit in that property, and then I'm attaching my natural account. You could even bring it 3 layers deep by having a territory or a state segment or something up top. We've named these things, but you can change the name to make them suit what you like. So some of our clients do that. They actually set up segments in their GP structure so that they can handle properties and units and even part units, whatever it is they want to manage. But that's not mandatory. Just letting you know it's there. Over on the right is where I want to focus for a couple of minutes. We've got the ability to handle revenue leases. You're collecting rent. Expenses, you're paying the bills. Cell towers, I'll leave that off. That was something that didn't go over very well. Expense allocation module. You could have a reasoning to say, look, I have a purchase that I'm making, and I want that purchase to automatically go to several leases in a certain percentage, a certain allocation amount. You can do that so that once you transact that purchase document, automatically those charges get added to the lease. So the next time you run the invoice process, those charges get invoiced. That's something that's very, very powerful, the expenses allocation module. We also understand that, well, meter reading is often a big need. Think about that for a moment. You're in a unit and you provide electricity, or you provide water, or you provide internet, or any of those things, and you want to be able to invoice for the quantity consumed. We have the ability to allow you to bring that information in very comfortably, put it on the documents, and go ahead and invoice when the time is right to invoice. And here's one that takes a bit of an explanation, this overage module. If you happen to be the type of customer that has sales-based rent, I charge a minimum rent to my customer in my mall, for example, but he also pays, or she also pays, so much for so many thousands of dollars in sales. So in the off season, the rent stays low. In the in season, the rent gets higher. And this is all tracked for me, and I can report on that. They can send me a spreadsheet with all the sales, and I can import that directly into the lease, charge them if necessary, let it slide if it's not necessary. But the other half of the overage module is common area maintenance configuration and allocation. So I have maybe charged the customer $50 a month for common area maintenance, and I've got 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 people in that building. Well, at the end of the year, I can allocate that all out, analyze it, make sure I get the right dollars. It could be either a credit I'm putting against a lease or a charge against a lease. Everything gets reconciled, and we start off again in the next year. So both functions come under this overage module, which is a little bit difficult to understand the term overage. Also, many of our customers have a situation where they want to have one-time charges brought in. Maybe it was a major repair or snow blowing or lawn mowing or something that wasn't usually in the mix. We have a system where we can import all of those transactions in one fresh import. It doesn't matter the charge type, doesn't matter the date range, doesn't matter the lease number. We can import those, and there's a template available to say, okay, these 50 charges, 100 charges are coming in this month. I'm going to add them to the leases, and now I can invoice for those charges as well. And we even have a work order integration that would go into the field services module if you're using that, or we have a basic work order management that's just part of our property lease tool as well. I'm not going to go into every other aspect of this because that would be very boring for you. We're going to actually look at some leases and walk through what it takes to actually manage a lease and work with a lease and see what kind of information we can get out. But just before I go in there, you'll notice under the revenue lease tab at the bottom left here, if you're sending out invoices to customers, you're going to collect the rent, you can do it through a sales order processing document, or you might just do straight AR where it's just the dollar amount. You have that choice that you can set up and manage that as you go. So let's leave here altogether. As you can tell, there's all sorts of setup issues that we could walk through here, one line after another. But rather than doing that, let's actually open up a couple of leases. We'll start with the revenue side, and then we'll take a look at the expense side. And the reason I'm going to do that is so you can be very comfortable with the similarity. So if you happen to be doing both, there's not going to be a big concern about are there great differences. So let's start with the revenue lease. And by the way, I'll be talking about some of these different card types as we go through that. So my revenue lease, we'll pick the last one. So what have I got here? Well, we try to design this so that you'll have as few mouse clicks as possible to get to all the pertinent information that you might want to check on a regular basis. So let's start with the top. This is the lease. Now you'll notice when I look at the lease, we've taken those GP sticky notes and we've added them in various places. And you'll notice this one has lines. Well, this lease number 18, it says it has a doc attached. Well, let's look at the attachment. Oh, it's an actual executed lease PDF. Well, let's take a quick peek at it. Now, if you're already used to using these in GP, there's nothing unusual about that, but we've attached it right here. But what I like about this is that you can attach documents or notes here at the lease number, over here, 3 different places for the lease commencement, down here at the charge type. So you've got an abundance of spots where you can actually attach just maybe a quick note or an actual document if required to make it more meaningful when you take a look at this lease. And it's captured, by the way, just so you know, inside your GP database. So you're not worried about putting this somewhere else and losing track of it. So under the lease, we've got a type. All the type is well, it's revenue. It's revenue and expense. And then we have a lease prefix. which is just simply saying, hey, all my revenue leases, I want to start with REV. All my expense leases, I might want to start with EXP, and so on and so forth. And now there's my lease number, which can be sequential, or you can dictate what it is. And as you can tell, the lease name and the description are something that you can modify at any point in time. Now, the property ID, in this case, it's called Hudson Park. If I open up this property ID, you'll notice I can put an address to it. I can say, do I want a particular segment in the chart of accounts to be represented by this property ID, or to represent this property ID? When did I buy it? Is it active? What kind of property is it? I've got commercial listed here, but it can be any kind of property that you want to set. And if I take a look at the tabs, property information, notice I can manage my square footage. That's where common area maintenance calculations come in. I can say, of that square footage, how much is actually leasable? If I open that up in the blue arrow, did I change it? So I could have, well, it's 125,000 square feet. The new value is 140,000. That was April 24, 2017. Finished renovations, available the 16th. Well, I could have another line saying, okay, added a wing, added a floor. When did that happen? What was the square footage? And I can track all of that against the lease so that I always know what portion of the total leasable space does a tenant have. So if I'm trying to track common area maintenance and make sure it's properly allocated to all my tenants, I can do that very easily. One other thing we've had a request from customers for many, many times is user-defined fields. So on the property itself here, we've got 5 user-defined fields. I've just happened to name one zone, but there's the 5 fields. We also have things like how many floors, do we have any wings, do we have amenities like maybe a gym or a daycare center? Look at that, a gym and a daycare center happens to be in this particular building. So we can track a lot of pertinent information about a particular building. And you notice down here, I've got another user-defined tab. If I open that up, oh, sorry, nothing on that. If I open that up, what that will give me is 40 fields for the property ID, this one aspect of this lease, 40 different fields that I can put whatever information I want into that system. So from property, I'm going to get down to the actual chargeable piece of the unit itself. So you notice the unit, I've got start dates and end dates, the total square feet and total leasable square feet. So if this had common area maintenance on it down here as a charge, I would have the total leasable square feet and actually what was leased by this particular tenant. And that's what the system would use to allocate common area maintenance properly. So when I look at the unit ID details, much the same as the property details, you'll notice I have a property description or name, I've got the unit type, what it is made of, and so on and so forth, what zone it's in, when I built it, when I acquired it, all sorts of information that I can track. Again, the square footage information is going to be here again. If I click on property info, when I open it up, once again, I've got square footage. I can see when the changes happen to that, what the rent is per square foot. So I can track a tremendous amount of information. And again, another 5 UDF fields. And by the way, that's in addition to, where to go here, right there, another 40 records that you can create and stipulate what kind of information you want to capture as well. So now we're up to 80 plus 10, 90 different user-defined fields. And we haven't stopped yet. Because if I back out of here, and I stop here just for a second, you'll notice on the header, we have another 40 user-defined fields. So up to 130 now. And I will tell you, if I pick on the customer, the tenant, we'll have another 40 there as well. So close to 200 user-defined fields, so you can really track whatever it is you want to track against any individual lease. So continuing on, I've got everything started here. On the far right, when was the lease executed? When is it going to commence? When's the rent going to start to be owed? I can track all that information, and again, I can attach the sticky notes to that as well. So my tenant, if I open it up, is just a customer. For the revenue lease, it's a customer. For the expense lease, well, it's the landlord. It ends up being a vendor that you have to pay. So nothing there as far as duplicating my AR records or bringing this in at night to make sure everything's in sync. It's going to be as it happens, as you process things. They will be in GP. You'll be able to grab reports and look at the data, or even build smart lists if you want and look at the data that way, because there's total integration with Dynamics GP itself. So your tenants are your customers. And if I click on the blue arrow, you'll notice I could have different customers sharing this particular building and paying the rent between them. and therefore I can have 3 or 4 tenants in one unit actually and collect rent for them. So that's basically the header. In this particular case, my lease is active. So let's walk across the different tabs just to give you a feel for the kinds of things that a lease will let you manage. For example, I've got a term here now. It's a 10-year term, starts here, it's going to end there. In 120 days before it expires, I want to be able to email my tenants. We can send them a reminder saying your lease term is up, we're going to renew it. It might be that their insurance is expired. It might be that the rent's going to go up or even down, and we want to notify them of that. And once I process that, there it is down here. If I wanted to, I could add another term and another term. They can just follow one after the other, and they'll automatically start the day after the end date of the previous term. If I did add a few, I could just hit process, and away we would go, and it would be as simple as that. I would have added my term. So you can have, again, as many terms as you like. We can also collect, think of you being the landlord. I might want to collect a pet deposit. Think if I can see other types of deposits. Let's just see what I've got here. Deposit ID. I've got pet, power, security, but as you can tell by looking, I can create all sorts of deposit types. And what's really powerful about this is you'll notice I can deposit it right here. There's my receipt number for this pet deposit of $850. What account it's going to go into, what checkbook it's going to go into, and when I want to return it, I can return it from here as well, and the reversing number will show up here and away I go. So I can do all these transactions without having to bounce back and forth to the different modules of GP to do that. Again, the integration is directly into GP. I can track things like insurance. So right now I've got personal liability insurance here. It's $50,000, 150 is the policy cost. The policy amount happened to be $50,000, a great checkpoint to make sure it's accurate. And if I wanted to, I could have reminders populated on this so that when it comes up for renewal, maybe 90 days before, I can send a reminder to my customer and make sure that they renew the insurance. And I can have, again, as many types of insurance with as many variable dates here as you want. And what makes this very nice is I can track this with a smart list if I wanted to, put a query on my home page that says, hey, when the count here is anything other than 0, let me know so I can make sure that we take care of this and send a reminder. We've also got unlimited contacts, obviously. So there's really, I don't know of any limit here how long this field is, but I know I've never had anybody tell me that they have filled the field. And again, there's my user-defined fields. So I've got 20 records on the left, another 20 records on the right. And these records can be defined to be anything I like. They can be dollar amount, string fields, yes, no checkboxes, whatever the case might be that typically user-defined fields allow you to utilize. So going back to my lease, that's the high level. All this does is say, okay, who's my customer? What's the property? What's the terms? And I've got all those up there. Now, when I get down to the body, based on what I've set up here, you'll notice I've got a lease called rent. If I look at the charge ID itself, this is one of those setup items that you would automatically have set up in advance. I set this charge ID up, it's called rent. It's a regular charge type, nothing unusual. It's revenue, this particular one. I could have payment terms, tax schedules, unit of measure schedule, all those things could be added. This could be a recoverable. Maybe I'm going to claim something back on it. I've got a charge account number. I've got a gain loss account number. That's why all that's mandatory for this particular field. But notice at the bottom, I could make this one automatically and always be a separate invoice to my customer. So they never get this mixed in with, say, maintenance charges or common area charges or electric utility charges or something to that effect. This could always be a separate invoice if you like. Or it could be an abatement, meaning maybe my rent is $500 a month, and you probably already know this, of course, but I'm going to give you a $2,000 credit. So if I click this as an abatement and put an amount in for the next 4 months rent, whatever it happens to be, until that abatement is used up, I'm not going to actually send you an invoice. But I'm going to track it. So I know that I had an abatement on this, and here's where it got used up. Or it could be deferrable. Now, many of our clients in Europe, it's a custom or a habit to pay rent a year in advance, a full year at a time, not month by month. Well, when they do that, they need to defer that revenue. They don't want to claim it all in the first month of the year, if everything was from January to December, for example. So we can have this so it automatically creates a deferral schedule that you can now recognize once a month. And every time you re-invoice the next year, another new deferral schedule would automatically be created. The joy of that is we can set that up in such a way that the user, the one who's processing the invoices, doesn't have to think about that. It just happens automatically in the background as that document gets created and posted within GP. So that's an example of a charge type. You could have as many charge types as you like to add to the lease. So going back to my lease itself, this is a rent. It's not that expensive. It's monthly, it's zero actually. So I'm going to open it up and take a look inside here. We've got all the details of what this is. It's rental income. Am I going to send reminders? Yes or no? Is it an abatement? All my account numbers would be in here, and everything I need to charge. If it is an abatement, I put the details here. If I had it before, last year, for example, I could have the history. If I do want the deferral created, I can click on the deferral button and move into that as well. So all sorts of capabilities as far as handling, back this up here, as far as handling charges are concerned. So you notice here I've got rent, utilities, and miscellaneous charges on this particular unit. Same kind of information on the header. You probably didn't even notice I changed lease. It was that quick and that fluid and that easy. So let's look at this rent one. When I open this one up, there's my $2,500 a month. There's my gain and loss accounts. If I close this back up and I go into my little blue arrow, what I'm doing now is I'm getting into the background, the detail of this lease. All the term information flows down in here. You'll notice, looks like I had an abatement, nothing got charged. Now all of a sudden, I'm charging $2,500 a month. I've got a 5-year term in here and a 3-year term. I've got no increase. Oh, wait a minute, I got a 5% increase. It's going to happen annually. Excuse me. So for my first 5 years, I should see that rent start to increase. So as I scroll down, I go from 2,500 to 2,625. Once again, keep in mind that for the user, someone who's responsible for managing the lease document or the lease itself, they don't have to think about it. As long as they set the term up properly and make sure that 5% increase is added in here, property lease management will take care of those charges and make sure the right amounts get charged when necessary. And you notice your type could be a lesser of or a greater of either a dollar amount, a percentage, maybe a CPI schedule, or it's called a rate schedule. Basically, it's a homeowner created a CPI schedule. So any of these can be utilized, and they can be different on every term. So what might be a 5% increase on one might be a 2% increase on the next term. A lot of flexibility in tracking that. So you notice I have the full term of the lease all down here, which means, by the way, that I can report on it financially. I have an estimation of what my revenue should be up to the end of the term of the lease, because property lease management calculates it dollars and cents, billing period by billing period, so you can track it. But we go a little further than that. If I scroll back up to the top here, you'll notice I've got a document number field, or if I'm doing straight line rent, a journal entry number field, or even a description in an expense document if I allocated expenses. Remember I said we have an expense allocation process that you could use as well, and that document number would show up here. So what does that mean? Well, here's document number 44. So click on the line, go up to the document number field, and lo and behold, there is my sales transaction window. This is the actual GP window where I process this rent for $2,500 and these utility charges for $300 each. And they're there, all in the document for me. So again, the integration with GP is complete. All I have to do is click on that document number and I'm right back to either the sales module or the expense module or even the GL if I need to get back into the GL and see what's in behind those transactions. So that's the power of having the detail here. Also, just so you know, if I was to change one of these percentages, say up a percent or down a percent, I could take a look at this and reconcile or preview it first to see, oh, what's it do to my numbers? Is that in harmony with the new agreement I have with the client? If it does, then I could process that in place and all that adjusted percentage would be reflected in all the unbilled fields that you've got here for the duration of the term of the lease. So pretty powerful from that perspective and making sure that you don't miss anything that you want to track. So let's back out of there and go back to my main document, the lease again. And again, I can have multiple charge types. Again, I'm not sure what the limit is. I've never come across a limit. So we can have deferral type charges. We can have abatement charges. We can have utilities charges, base rent charges. anything you can think of that you might want to invoice a customer for on a regular basis based on some property they have of yours, we can list here and we can put out the charge. So if we close this off, let's take a couple of minutes. There's a few extra things that the expense side can handle for us I'd like you to see. So I'll look at an expense lease. I'm going to go to the very last item here. So in this particular item, I have yet another charge. If I look at this charge ID, oh, something a little different. Under ASC 842, IFRS 16, there are my lease component GL accounts, and my finance lease GL accounts, my operating lease GL account. Again, I've still got the separate invoices and abatements and so on and so forth. But the point is, now I've got an automation taking place so that I can stay in harmony with those government accounting standards without expending a lot of mental energy and manual time trying to make sure that the right dollar amounts are being dealt with each and every month. Let me show you what that means. So I've added this to the lease. Again, when I open up the Windows chevron, there they are. All the accounts are right there. I close this up, go back into the detail of this particular lease. Now I've got several invoice numbers, and again, just so you see it, I'm going to pop back and take a look at the voucher. We're on the other side of the coin now. So now I'm looking at a payables transaction entry window, and there's the dollar amount that we invoiced, or we're going to pay, pardon me, to this particular vendor for the rent for that month. And again, all my different dollar amounts are reflected here, but here's where I think it becomes very powerful from an accounting standard. You'll notice up top, you see the button called right of use asset amounts. If I click on that, I'm going to get what looks very much, as basically it is, an amortization schedule. Amortization expense, lease liability expense, right of use asset balance. And where did this all begin? Right of use asset journal entry, 592. I open it up, there's 591, 592. If I drill down in, I get my actual GL, this time transaction entry, and there's what went on the balance sheet. I can close that one off if I want. Go down to the next one, take a look at it as well. And now I've got my starting point for my ASC 842 calculation, so that when I cut an invoice and I go to pay that bill every month, I don't have to think about what's happening to my balance sheet accounts for the right of use asset and the lease liability. They're going to be reduced accordingly. Theoretically, at the end of my term, if everything's paid on time, everything's correct, I'm going to have $0 left in both the liability and the right of use asset account, in perfect harmony with the standards. And there's what's going to happen each and every month as these transactions take place. So keep that in mind. Very, very powerful tool for making sure we track those events. And as a matter of fact, if I close out of here, what I want you to notice is when you set a lease up from scratch, well, I can set it up to be an operating lease over here on the left, finance lease, which this one is, meaning I'm basically buying it. And it could be short term. If I check that box off, it means it's not going on the balance sheet. It's only less than a year. And I can put a discount rate in there. And you'll notice that discount rate is not grayed out because modifications can happen. Maybe you're using the bank rate as your discount rate. For some reason, the government puts the bank rate up a couple of points. Well, you might want to come in here, repopulate that. And when you do, there is a utility that comes with the tool to recalculate your amortization schedule for your right of use assets and your lease liabilities. So you can have the freedom not to be overly concerned, oh my goodness, if I change this rate, it's going to be a mess for the next 10-year term. No, it isn't, because property lease management will take care of the adjustments for you, and everything will have a full audit trail so that the auditors can come in and see exactly what's happened, when it happened, who did it, what the dollar amounts were, and so on and so forth. So everything is trackable. So that is the actual expense side of it. And the only extra thing I really wanted to make sure you saw was the fact that the ASC 842 Harmony is built directly into the product. So what have we done? Well, we've set up two leases and taken a look at them. We've set up all the terms and the units that are going to be occupying, the ASC 842 aspect of it, the rate, the bank rate, whatever it is that we need to set up has been done. But we haven't generated any revenue or cut any checks to the vendors yet. That's over here under the transaction window. So you notice revenue lease invoices. If I click on this, by the way, is another one of our products, multi-entity, many companies in the same database. So you don't worry about that. We'll just mark them all. So now when I look on this here, I've got billing start date and as of date. Okay, I can say, what's today? We'll just say 2021. So I've got 2021. I'm going to pick a batch number here. And the batch, what I want you to notice here is the batches are all actual batches from the sales module. So if I click on this batch right here, and I open it up and I go look at it, direct integration to GP. We're not talking about an outside product that has to be integrated on a regular cyclical basis. The only thing you have to do on a cyclical basis is make sure you go ahead and you run your documents. If I redisplay the field, I should get a ton of information that may or may not be invoiced. Now, for the sake of the fact that I'm doing this as a webinar, I'm not going to go and run the process and actually create the documents. But understand, all I would have to do is say, oh, I can shift click, control click, whatever I want to do, mark the selected fields, and I could actually now process this, and it would create a batch or populate this batch right here with the transactions, pull the document numbers back to the lease record, and block off that particular billing period from being invoiced again for that particular charge. And you notice we have a ton of information that you can check to make sure that it's what you think it should be if you want to do that. Now, we can also filter by property, filter by the unit, filter by the tenant, as you can see, filter by the lease number. All sorts of different ways of filtering this should you so desire to fill it. I've got it right now default to billing start date, but if I wanted to, I could change this date, say to, well, let's make it 01/31/2021. So I'm billing it in arrears, if you will. Or then I could say, okay, let's build this. You get the idea. 11/01/2021. And the as of date is going to be 11/30/2021. So now I'm billing in advance. Simple as that. And if I was to refresh this, it would go ahead and give me a brand new list. What I like about this, from a very simplistic perspective, is if I had the auditors coming in, it was the month of March. If I wanted to, I could see, hey, let's run all my invoices for December 31st, 2020. Oh, there isn't any. Oh, good. It's all been done. I don't have to worry about it. Because the system will always check every single charge on every active lease and bring in that item, that charge for that period or all the periods up to November 30th, 2021, if I had missed invoicing some before. All right, so very, very powerful from that perspective. So that's the revenue lease creator. Now, if I stop and I go to the other side, well, it doesn't look any different at all because it isn't any different. My batch now, instead of a sales batch, if I open up one here, take a look at it, I think you know what's coming. It's a payables batch. It's as simple as that. So the integration is very, very tight with GP. So as I process the rent charges or I process the vouchers, it's going into the database. It's going to be against customer aging. It's going to be against my total debt to the vendor and so on and so forth. And these customers and vendors can still be regular customers doing other business with you or you doing business with them. But they can also be either tenants or paying you rent, which is probably the preferable side of things. And just very quickly, without going into all of the details of it, you'll notice we can reconcile. There's my expense allocation process, by the way. We can reconcile by contributions. And I've said, what about CAM? Well, let's say CAM expense. And I can pick a year. I can pick a property. And once I do that, if there's nothing to reconcile, it means one of two things. It means in that year I didn't do any of that, or it could mean that I did not charge the customer any common area maintenance. If I do not charge the customer common area maintenance, then you cannot reallocate to that customer. That's the criteria of contribution. Let's see if I can have something on the other side. Bear with me just a second. I'm going to pick New Hampshire again, and I'm going to pick charge time, regular CAM, and let's pick 2018. So, common area maintenance. I want to just walk through this very quickly with you, just so you get a feel for how detailed this is. 365 days of the year, this particular place had 9,200 square feet, and the reconciliation shows up here. There's an amount due field, there's an amount billed field, $9,000 balances off, 1620 balances off. Perfect. Let's say 2017. Go back a year. Oh, look at this. 74 days. This particular lease number 1 was 8,500 square feet. Then for the last 291 days, it was 9,200 square feet. All the calculations, all these different fields. This can be busy, but hopefully you're beginning to realize that, wow, if I do have an agreement with a customer to allocate common area maintenance, I can keep very, very accurate records of what's happening. I can make sure I have charges going into a certain GL account. I can then reconcile everything I've collected from my tenants to that certain GL account, perfectly balanced at the end of the day. So very, very powerful tool to reconcile your common area maintenance, or it could be utilities as well. It doesn't have to be just common area maintenance. It could be utilities charge. Anything that varies month to month in the agreement is that it's going to be reconciled at the end of the year. We can handle the sales-based rent in here and get the reporting, get the import from an Excel spreadsheet, make sure that's allocated properly. If I look down, we have the ability to bring in meter readings. We can create a service work order for this particular property. And now I can assign it to either a vendor or employee. I can give them an equipment list and have them go out and take a look at the equipment on that particular piece of property and see what's in that. That might look something like this. If I bring a lease up, and I have my equipment list here somewhere. Yeah, I have my equipment. I don't have any added here, but I'll show you. This could be from property lease management, meaning I'm just simply going to put it in. I got the invoice for this piece of equipment. Maybe it's a generator. So I'm going to put in what it is, what the item number is, what the serial number is, and describe what it is. So now I know this piece of equipment's been attached to this piece of property. Or it could be from the field service module if you have that portion of GP up and running. Or it could even be an attachment from fixed assets. I want to stress, however, that if you're attaching a fixed asset to a lease as a lease component, nothing's going to happen to the fixed asset. It's not going to modify that asset in GP. It's just going to simply say, hey, it's located in this particular piece of property. Now, if I close it off, go right down to the unit itself. You'll notice I have another equipment tab on the unit itself. If I look at that, my generator, there's my serial number. It's a King Canada 8500 watt generator. So I can have them at different levels. I can have something attached to the building itself, but I can also get down to the unit level where a particular customer vendor is going to be accountable for what I am tracking in that particular aspect of the lease document. So hopefully you're getting an idea that there's a tremendous amount of functionality that you can track using the lease management tool. I find it pretty well for most of the last 15 years, the customers that we have on it. There's not much else they need to track besides the things that we give them when you include the 200, I guess it's 200 plus user-defined fields as well. So that's all great. We have all sorts of functionality over here. We've created a lease over here. Just so you know, we can import existing lease data. We know that very few people start off day one. Oh, Monday I'm going to become a leasing company. I need your product. Most of them are in there and getting ticked off with either a very, very difficult to work with program that they're using today, or they're getting ticked off using spreadsheets and human error. They come to us with a number of existing leases with history. We can import all of that, bring it all in, track it in such a way that you can report on that history, but there's no danger of re-invoicing a customer or recreating a voucher and end up being out of balance. So we have all sorts of utilities that can make sure you bring in the information from outside. As you can see here, we have a tremendous amount of inquiry screens that you have as well. So for example, things like a disclosure report. I'm going to mark, oops, I'm going to mark everything here. I should have just a bit, redisplay this here. No, from date, I'm sorry, yes, my bad. Let's say 1, 2, no, that's not, let's say 01. 012021, if that works for me. Let's redisplay that. And we'll say December 31st, what I meant to say. If there's nothing there, I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'll go to the right of use asset instead. And just so you know, we just had this database updated. So I've had my developers in here playing with a little bit. And we'll insert that and we display it. And if it does work, I'm just going to explain it to you. I don't want to waste time waiting for something to populate. In this particular case, it'll give me a report for both disclosure and right of use asset termination report so that you can see exactly what's happened on your balance sheet for those leases that are ASC 842 compliance. You can even do standard, just give me everything that I've leased out here, give me all my revenue, give me all my expenses, give me my billing details. But what I like is more positive is over here on the SSRS style reports. If I look at my revenue report for forecast, and I click, I'm going to mark them all my companies. I'm going to pick a standard report, let's say demo. So I've said from January 2020, December 31st, 2021, so a couple of years here. And I want to have all my properties. I'm not going to filter anything out. I'm just going to print this report. What it's going to give me, I'll make it a little bigger just so we can see it a little more clearly. What it's going to give me is in blue, everything that's been either invoiced or invoiced or vouchers created. Here is forecast. What's going to happen in the future? And I know it's not real life forecast, but that's what the color coding means. So I've got every single lease for every single customer or tenant, in this case, it's the expense side of things, that I can track. If I close that and I go down to my rent roll for, say, expenses, I get a very popular report here as well. I'll just pick up an example of one, and I'm going to run that report and print it off. And I'll make that a little bit bigger. So I've got the same kind of logic here. Here's the rent. You see there's going to be an X escalation amount. It's going to go from 1736 to 1823. The date's going to be January 1st, 2022. There's my annual rent, and so on and so on and so on. All of these reports, because they are SQL Server style reports, if you're not aware of this, if I go up to the top left here, I could dump them out to an XML file, a CSV file, an Excel file, and I could start playing with the data, manipulating the data outside of GP with no danger of affecting GP itself. So a ton of inquiries, and I apologize for the data not being there with those, a ton of actual financial reports that are pre-designed in SQL Server. In no way does that mean you cannot go and design your own. You absolutely can go do that, should you so desire. But we go a little farther with reporting, just what you see here. If I go up to my Microsoft Dynamics and scroll down to Smart Lists, what I want you to notice is if I go down to Property Management, we have some pre-built Smart Lists for you. But if you wanted to build your own Smart List, hit New, and you can scroll down to all the GP views, and also scroll all the way down to Property Management and look at the tables in your database for Property Management as well. And that will give you all the fields that we have put into the GP database, the SQL database, so that you can build your own SQL Server reports. You can build your own Smart Lists. You can even build your own inquiries depending on the skill sets that you have, or you can even build other views, matching this information with other information that you're capturing. By the way, the reason that's fluttering is it's trying to drill down and find all the pertinent information for me. So we think about data access. I bring everything in to GP. I process real time, create my vouchers, create my invoices. I can modify terms. I can add charges. I can modify charges. I can capture the documentation for every transaction I process. It will come back to the lease into that particular charge type, attach itself to that billable period so that you've got a record of that. I can tell you that auditors love that kind of thing, where they can just go right back to the document in GP, know exactly what happened, where it came from. Very, very powerful aspect of that. I can report through SSRS. I can report through standard inquiry screens. I can report through Smart Lists if I want to do that. All of that capability is right there. Now, I mentioned to you that we can also do things like add a series of charges. So for example, one-time charge. This is standard and basic functionality right here. I'm not showing you anything that's an extra module. I've got my company structure. Again, you can ignore that. My tenant, oh, my tenant B. Let's pick Aaron Fitz. And if I look at the lease number, Aaron might have more than one lease. Well, he doesn't. He has lease 14. And the unit that he's leasing is this one right here. That's all well and good. So what am I charging him? Well, I have maybe it's a rent, could be miscellaneous. Not sure what it was. Maybe it was lawn mowing, broken window, whatever it might be. And there's where it's going to go on the GL when I post this. And I can have a charge date. Let's just say 1001-2021 to 1031-2021. So this month, and it was $250. I could force it to be a separate invoice because it's an unusual thing. And I can put a sales order document because this is a revenue charge here. I could put a comment on the sales order that this gets processed to if I want to, saying, here's what this charge is for. And I would just process it, and away I go, and it would process that against that particular lease and give me a report. So there's my report. That charge has been created. It's now on that lease number 14, and you can go ahead and you can invoice that if you want. But one at a time may not be convenient for some of the clients looking at this product. Some of our clients have hundreds of these miscellaneous charges because they have so many leases. What we also have, two more things to show you, and then we'll open it up for questions if there are any, or give you some time back. How's that? So when I look at my mass one-time charge import window, you'll notice I've got the company that we've got here with another product, who the tenant is, what the lease number is, what the description is, what's the property, what's the unit, what's the charge ID, what's the account number you want it to go to, what's the date range where you want this charge to come from, meaning I could have the same charge listed multiple times with different date ranges, meaning this is going to be taking place over, say, the next 3 or 4 months or next 6 months. What's the amount? What's the SOP the comment you want? Is it going to be a separate invoice? And so on and so on and so on. I could have line after line of these revenue type charges, and then all I have to do is import them. Or I could have one charge type, one account, one date range, have all these leases here, a fixed amount. Maybe it's a one-time homeowners association fee that you're putting on this particular group of leases. So you can use either that or have different charge types, different date ranges, different dollar amounts on every single line. Just simply go process, and away you go. And of course, this can be imported from a spreadsheet as well. So there is no need to try to manually fill this out. But if you have a lot of charge types, it doesn't matter if you're doing revenue or you're doing expense, both will work just fine. This is a small utility that if you did like the product, there'd be a small charge for that. But keep in mind, you've got the one-time charge capability right there. Now, I did mention at the outset that you also have the capability to use wizards. So you notice I have a new lease wizard, which is going to walk me through step by step by step, making sure my charges, my deposits, my terms are all set up. But I've also got an extending lease wizard. Maybe they want to extend their lease. It's a 10-year term, and they want to add another 2 years to it. Well, I can add an extend lease wizard. Again, primarily for people just getting used to the product so that they don't make a mistake or they don't miss something, and they can do that. But we can also recognize that people move. So we can have a space change wizard. Now, that's a cool one because that could be a different property altogether. Maybe they're moving across country, or it could just be a different unit in the same building. It doesn't matter. This will make sure that you do a step-by-step process of that. So you've got an audit trail and it's tracked what happened and you don't miss anything. And finally, they may actually move out. So you may have them leaving before the term is up. You may have you leaving before the term is up on your landlord. You may have deposits that you have to return, damage deposit you're not going to return, all sorts of little things like that. Again, a step-by-step wizard to walk you through the process so things don't get mixed up. Excuse me, sorry, little frog in my throat there. So at a very, very high level, that is property lease management, primarily from the expense side to make sure we handle ASC 842 requirements or IFRS 16. From the rental side, hey, are we having an operating lease? Are we having a finance lease? Are we having a short-term lease? All those terms apply. So you've got the ability to track all that information now. You saw the full integration with GP, either the vendor side of things or the customer side of things, the GL side of things. Any questions at all that I can answer for you on this particular functionality? Nothing? That's good. If that's the case, you get a little bit of your time back and you are good to go. Thank you very much for listening. Back to you, Casey. If there's any comments or any questions that you might have stored away there.
Unmuted.
All right. Thank you, Don. Well, that was an excellent demo. Very impressive. Everyone, I just wanted to take a moment and offer the ability to ask questions one more time if you have any specific questions, or even if you wanted to just kind of share your situation with Don and and see if he has any recommendations or if he believes the product would be a good fit. Be a perfect forum for that. If you would prefer to hold your questions and just connect with us afterward, we could connect with Binary Stream and go through. You've already seen a demo here, so we could kind of go through your business case and then show you a demo exactly as it would relate to your company. So let me just pause.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyone has any
I just mentioned one other thing. We've been focusing on Dynamics GP, but this same product is also available in the Business Central world and also available in F&O as well. So in all the current dynamic range of ERPs.
Great point, Don. So Don, what happens if somebody deploys property management for GP and then they end up moving to BC or one of the other systems? Would that be a redeployment, or could you just unhook that from GP and hook it up to BC?
There are always things that are negotiable, but it is technically a redeployment. You're moving into a different ERP and a different setup. One thing that can happen though, especially from GP to the BC world, there's lots of ways of getting the data over much more easily than in the past. Microsoft is working a lot on bringing standard data over, and we too have been working a lot on bringing our utility data over from GP to the BC world too. So there are some dollar savings for sure.
Got it. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. So if anyone does have any, if anything pops up, or if anyone would like to see pricing on the product or to have a personalized demo, please let us know. You can indicate that on the order form, or you can just reach out to us at the number on the screen, or your account manager if you are an Express customer. And then one more reminder that we are offering a 10% discount on the product for members of people who attended the webinar. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it. And Don, thank you for the excellent demo.
You are very welcome. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.